There's Goofy and then
on behalf of the Associated Students of Arizona State University and the Lecture Series Department, I'd like to welcome all of you here this evening. I apologize again for the restriction in seat numbers and everything. There was a delay in the construction. It was supposed to be done last week and it's not. But we're dealing with the situation the best we can, and I appreciate all your help here tonight, because when things are going to get out of hand, if they do, I'd appreciate it if they wouldn't. It will be shut down. So if you want it to go on, we need your help as well. On to bigger and better things. Okay, to look back at the 60s, a time that when looked back on now is remembered with a bit of nostalgia. The music, the air, the attitude. Make love, not war. Turn on, tune in, drop out.
you didn't get none.
That was then, and this is now. The Reagan administration, George Bush, both pumping a large part of our government spending to fight the ongoing battle against drugs. Tonight we bring you a separation of those attitudes. Dr. Timothy Leary worked at Harvard University closely studying the effects of different drugs on individuals. An excellent author as well, Dr. Leary has developed a close-knit following over the years, many of which are obviously here tonight. Mr. Curtis Sliwa, a man who also has an avid following, a true leader and self-motivated crime fighter, he and his wife Lisa founded the Guardian Angels, a group with an impact in over 50 cities across the nation, including an extremely active chapter here in the Valley. As the debate will go on, the format will be a 15-minute introduction speech by both members, followed by a 5-minute rebuttal. After that, there will be an open question and answer session to the audience. Answers will be restricted to 3 to 5 minutes in response, and they will go from the front microphone to the back microphone. Those two microphones will be altered. Me and another person will be manning those two microphones. So after the 5-minute rebuttal, please line up behind one of the two microphones and we'll answer as many of the questions as we can. Please, when you do ask a question, address it towards both speakers on the issue, drugs in America. Please do not address a question to one speaker or another. We let this be a debating format. Again, we appreciate your support. First, I give to you Dr. Timothy Leary. Mr. Curtis Sliwa. And now for the 15-minute introduction, opening statement, Dr. Timothy Leary.
Oh, you guys, you want to hear from the doctor so bad. I mean, this guy has weaned the whole generation. I mean, you're like frothing at the mouth to hear those pearls of wisdom dropping from his lips. I want to tell you right now, I cannot compete with this man. The academic credentials, the worldwide travel, the esteem, the recognition. I mean, remember in the 60s, this was every Herkimer Church guru in America and the world. I mean, he had them following him no matter where he went. Algeria, Europe, Asia, anywhere in America, they were quick to beat a path on Dr. Timothy Leary. And I'm going to have a hard time in this age of increasing drug use of arguing intellectually and academically that drugs should not be legalized, should not be decriminalized. It's going to be very difficult. But my scholarship was earned in the subways of New York City. My experiences were weaned in the ghettos of our inner cities. And my parchment, although not from Stanford or Harvard, is based on the time, long-ending personal experiences in dealing with families, the human structure that's been destroyed by this ravage of drugs. I can think of no better person, and this is not a pat on my back, but because of the generation I'm from, to counteract Dr. Leary. Because you see, I was born a boot-tube vegetable kid. Like many of you, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, like a walking Mr. Potato Head, just vegetating before the boot tube. And I mean, I saw this guy, right? There I was in my teenage years, starting to grow my hair out a little bit, because, that was what the trendoids were doing at the time. And this guy, he was on 60 Minutes, and there was Wallace interviewing him. You name the magazine, you name the periodical, there was Dr. Timothy Leary. And a whole bunch of other kookalamungers from that era in the 60s. And I mean, they were driving out a message. Tear down the walls. Don't just accept what the authority will tell you to do. You got to challenge that authority. And I'm telling you, it sounded damn good. Sounded damn good, that is, until after you survived those trying times, you noticed that although there was a lot of knocking down, there wasn't much restructuring. In fact, there wasn't much of a revalue system, much at all. Thank you, Doctor. And during those 60s, you had all different types of individuals who were tearing away the infrastructure, the family, the foundations of our country, and they said, hey, there was a better way to live. And I mean, we were all emasculated. I mean, we were mesmerized at the fact that we could change the world. We could be such a better human being, more humanitarian, more cosmopolitan, more open-minded. I'm telling you, it seemed like there were a lot of interesting things ahead. And part of that subculture, naturally, was the use of drugs. And I'm sure Dr. Leary is going to conjure up images of Woodstock, peace, love, and happiness, right? People banging away, banging every 5 seconds. Nobody killed, no homicides. No Jim Jones, drink the Kool-Aid, and we all pass into the extraterrestrial.
That was the 70s.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Doctor, there was another gathering of youthful cohorts at a racetrack in California, highlighted by the Rolling Stones, Jefferson Avenue. I mean, big name groups. Don't bring that one up, Sliwa. And what was it? A bunch of Ku Klux Klan guys. Oh, no, excuse me, they had the Hells Angels there. Those people who don't tolerate blacks and Hispanics and people of color. And if you remember, in the midst of that concert, they were pulling out their pool cues and beating the living daylights out of this black guy because he happened to be sitting with a white female. Yeah, I know it was bullshit. It was on film, right? I conjured that. CIA, obviously, created that. That's a CIA plot. And there was Mick Jagger going, oh, I lost the button off the trousers. What's going on up there? And I mean, the whole world was shocked. But we never want to bring up Altamont. We want to bring up the memories of Woodstock. And you see, I prefer to look at things in a little bit more of a balanced way, because I had to live and survive and go through a period of readjustment where prevailing negative peer pressures were pushing my generation in an opposite direction. And then we entered the 70s. And it was a time where America needed to heal, and everybody acknowledged that. And again, people like Dr. Leary and his adherents were on the cutting edge of change. Well, what I saw growing up is that this drug part of the culture began more systemically influencing our normal quality of life. I would visit little Johnny's house now, and all of a sudden I go in the living room, and instead of the Tonka toys, or any number of other items to give us pleasure, there was modern-day atriums in the living room. All kinds of exotic plants growing. Kids, instead of playing with the Tonka toys and Lego toys, were playing with bombs and all other kinds of paraphernalia. And Mom and Dad were doing exactly what Dr. Leary advocated. You know, free their mind, experience life, remotivate yourself, give yourself a different option. And they sure were going in that direction. And then, unfortunately, we hit that brick wall. Boom! The 80s. Holy mackerel. Cocaine, crack, devastation, crime escalating through the roof. Modern day elements, it looked like a picture like Born Out of the Dead. Zombies roaming around, crack crazed as they are. Extra bars on the windows, additional locks on the doors, having to turn Fifi from the French poodle friend of men and women into King the pit bull terrier killer of men and women. America was becoming such a great place to live. And part of that reason was this drug subculture that had now ingrained itself on almost 3 generations. And now, every one of you out there are saying all the more reason to talk about legalizing and decriminalizing. And no question, Dr. Leary has been on that cutting edge from day one. The problem is, though, as the numbers begin to mount in support and advocacy for that concept, what we're forgetting, what we're throwing to the wayside, is the moral arguments. We get so caught up in that individual I and me, which has marked the decade of the 80s. And I'm sure you'll hear tonight arguments that individual rights are paramount in our society, in our country. That you should be able to do to your body what you choose on whatever occasion.
That's proud.
A true civil libertarian point of view. And you need to be applauded unless you see what's happened as a result with the human fallout in our nation. You same individuals will sit there piously and will sit there totally indifferent to the fact that you are literally, by your point of view, advocating for so many who are not here with us this very day, but will be born in the future. Not freedom of choice, not an advocacy of civil liberties, but rather some who will be destined to be born as crack babies, cocaine babies, heroin babies. Now, you've seen enough of the pictures, 20, 60 minutes. You see the babies weaving in pain. It's as if their newborns had just been scalded with hot, burning water for weeks, sometimes months on end. They have to literally go through withdrawal. Just as they're breathing their first breath, they're taking in their first sights, they're developing their first senses, and they're already predetermined, addicted to these various forms of drugs. And all of you out there are willing to cast that all asunder and say, hey, well, that's the price of our freedom and the pursuit of our individual use, and if it means abuse, so be it. What happened to that day in the 60s when young people were risen by a spirit that said, us and we are responsible for what we reap upon the rest of the world? What about that good humanitarian spirit that sent many of our brothers and sisters, our older brothers and sisters, to foreign ports of call to help the disadvantaged? Individuals living in third world countries, individuals who didn't have the same rights or abilities as we Americans in growing up. Now all of a sudden we cast that away and take the easy lot out. I don't know, I'm an American that was brought up to believe that we must think of the us and the we. And before Dr. Leary gives you an onslaught of statistics and proves his argument all the more, I'm going to acknowledge to you that yes, 80% of those out there using drugs, and that includes alcohol, can handle it. They're not those drug-crazed zombies that I spoke about. They're not breaking into your car, ripping off your car stereo. They're not attacking your very rights. They're not invading the very quality of life that we've come to respect and honor here in America. But there is a 20% out there, and you have seen some of them yourselves personally. Whether you come from rural America, suburban America, or inner city America, and you've seen some of them laying prostrate, unable to fend for themselves, losing control of their mental and physical faculties, some of them defecating on themselves. We've seen the pictures in nearby reservations of our Native American Indians, so alcohol-induced into a stupor that they're knocked on their ass 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, incapable of functioning. How many of our inner city brothers and sisters that we have seen become skeletal-like creatures as crack begins to tear away at their pores and literally strip the life away from their structure? You know, I'm an American that was brought up to say, hey, if 20% of our people are suffering, and I think we can all admit that drugs are not a necessity for survival. It's not like air. It's not like food. It's a leisure time activity. For most Americans, they say they take it because it makes them feel better. It relieves the stress. It relieves the day-to-day trying tedium, boredom of life itself. But when we put that on the balance scales, we have to say, hey, but there's 20% of us out there who get an insatiable appetite for these drugs, who have no sense of self-control, who are not chippers, who are not just weekend users, who once they taste of this brew or substance, and once it becomes systemic in their existence, that they are literally enslaved by it. Many of the people of Dr. Leary's time who would walk arm in arm in the Deep South to guarantee the rights of black people in the Civil Rights era would just as soon want to legalize a form of slavery that will particularly be felt in the inner city and poor and impoverished communities, but ramifications would also be seen in suburban and rural America. I call it the legalizing of slavery for 20% of our population. Because what we would be advocating and end up doing is putting chains and shackles on so many of our fellow brothers and sisters who don't have that self-control for whatever reason, whether it's medical or psychological. We've seen enough problems from alcohol, Lord only knows, and I know Spuds McKenzie is as much a hero to you as Dr. Timothy Leary. Yeah, Spuds, right? Hey, Spuds and Dr. Leary, right? Thanks for a great weekend. You got it. I recognize that. The point, in fact, is we are a country
3 hours later
of many different peoples from many different backgrounds. And in tough times, we've always had to pull together. And some of you have marveled at the enormous number of changes that have taken place almost in fleeting days over in East Europe. They are beginning to pull down their walls. They are beginning to demand freedom. But with that freedom, notice there is a caution, even amongst those who are fleeing, choosing a better way of life. They fear the more decadent life of the westernized civilization. They fear the drugs and the crime that they see towards the West. And they see that we on the West have not necessarily gotten control of our own situation. So I've got to appeal to you on a moral basis. You out there, party animals, some of you, individual free thinkers, civil libertarians, people now who are involved in academic studies. So you're somewhat separated from the reality of, let's say, the inner cities. You are determined to make that decision because you feel it is best for the welfare of our country and naturally the status of the individual in the state that we call America. But I've got to appeal to you not on an academic or an informative level, but rather on a moral level. Who amongst you out there will determine in advance to cash the form of slavery on so many thousands, tens of thousands, who will not have an opportunity to choose for themselves whether to use, abuse, or to abstain. I, as an individual, just cannot make that decision. Thank you.
Dr. Leary the same right. Dr. Leary?
I think we are all sharing at this moment in history a sense of exaltation and joy and sudden relief that in the last week, the last month, the last 6 months, we have seen almost a miracle happen in China and briefly in Eastern Europe. And I want to thank you, Curtis, for bringing this up and sharing that, because it is kind of insane that at this moment in world history, when the notion of individual freedom, and that's what those young people on the Berlin Wall were saying, and in Prague, young people saying individual freedom, at this moment, when we should be meeting to figure out what new political structures and what new post-political societies we want, and how can we take advantage of this incredible surge of freedom, the walls coming down, as Curtis said, we should be sitting here discussing some insane war on vegetables. I want to point out two things. One, the politicians were totally surprised by what happened in Berlin. My God, what's going on? The pundits, the head of the opposition in East Germany said, "No, we did not expect it. What's going on?" The think tank people and the learned columnists and political science said, "What's going on?" Well, it's as plain as the eyes in your face what's going on. This was a revolution of young people. Basically, it was a revolution started by Americans. It spread around the world. It started in '63 with Martin Luther King. It really exploded in San Francisco with the first flooding. I don't have to list the public swarmings of young people, peaceful swarming, saying, "We want to change." Exactly at that time, when, just yesterday, last night, there was a general strike in Czechoslovakia, all over the country, and the workers, the old round-faced, weazened workers who've been for 40 years under the thumb of communism, were shouting, "Long live the students!" I mean, I had a chill, because the older workers and the older East Germans recognized that it was the outpouring of young people who stood up. First there were 10,000, then 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 young people, and then everything else came out. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because it's tragic and ironic at this moment in world history, when American ideals of Jefferson and of Dr. Spock, and basically it was Marshall McLuhan who said, "Media's the message." He was the one that got that signal out, and the kids in Europe and the kids in China learned from TV how we went about this stopping the war and standing up for individual freedom. Exactly at this moment, there are two major imperial countries who not even paying attention to what's going on there. They're locked in some weirdo religious civil war. The two countries that are not with it are Iran and the Reagan and the Bush administrations. I mean, in Iran, the same fervor. The war is on what? The war is on the great state in America and on Solomon Rushdie. This irrational desire to find some distraction. I'm going to try to demonstrate to you that the problems facing America today, I'm going to say this, you know that illegal drugs are about 100th on the list. Matter of fact, it's illegal drugs that cause the deaths. 400,000 Americans die because of nicotine, 100,000 alcohol, 50,000 from drunken driving. And you know, the drunken driving, it's not the user that gets off. You know, the guy with the first thing a drunk knows is, if you're going to drink and drive, always get a big heavy American car, right?
Yeah.
It's you with your virtuous Volvo, Secretary of VW, they get bounced off the road by the drunken driver. The fatalities due to cocaine are about 3,000 a year, compared to 100,000 booths. And we do have a problem, I know. I guess we have a problem with marijuana. Jeez. Statistic, the marijuana agricultural trade in this country is $69 billion a year. I mean, marijuana is the largest cash agricultural crop in about 5 or 6 states. I mean, what's the problem with marijuana here? Why is marijuana on the list? Why is that? You know, they're throwing people in prison for 5, 10 years. I personally spent 4.5 years in prison for less than half ounce of marijuana. I mean, what the fuck's going on here? There is one grain of honesty in the drug warriors. Why do they include marijuana? I mean, I'm simply making the point that there's no logic, there's no common sense, there's no scientific basis. And we point out that everything the American government has done in the last 8 years, they're getting the National Guard out, we're all being forced to urinate in bottles. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent in incredible pogroms and police actions that we're about to create, according to Czar Bennett. Good old police state here. Curtis, we all share with you the tragedy of the inner city. And there's no question of it. The number one problem our country's facing domestically is the problem of the inner city. Now there is a big cocaine and crack problem in the inner city. We've got to do something about it. But the way to do something about it is not to triple the prison cells in this country so that you'll have in 5 or 10 more years up to 400 or 500, maybe 1 million minority group young people in prison for life. That's not the way to deal with this problem. The problem of crack and cocaine in the inner city is due, and you know what I'm going to say, to the problems of poverty, despair, and the fact that crack is very profitable. Now, if you legalize or decriminalize drugs, within 1 day, you will put out of business $160 billion export problem, or sending our money down to Peru and Colombia. You put the gangsters there out of business, and in 1 day you have you can eliminate the profits in the ghetto. We can do something with education. I personally am working almost full-time on software programs that turn an inner-city school into a fast-moving exchange of information, competitive, athletic. We can, by changing our educational techniques, approach the problem of 50% of our inner city kids not graduating from high school. There's the problem of education, there's the problem of training, there's the problem of morale. For 8 years, Reagan administration has been openly disregarding the problems of minority groups. There's a problem of addiction. Within 2 or 3 years, if we had a craft program, we could develop antidotes to cocaine. We could develop blockers to heroin. Education, you have to teach people how not to abuse drugs. You know, when cocaine is decriminalized, makes it kind of hard to get. You have to line up to get it, like a driver's license. You have a party on Friday night, you have to spend Wednesday afternoon getting it. You know, it makes it bureaucratic. Take the thrill out of it, take the glamour out of it, take the profits out of it. There should be education, there should be movies showing how people screw up with different drugs, label, warnings on the package. No, when the government criminalizes an activity that humans are going to participate in, we lose control of it. Once the Bush administration, if they succeed, criminalizes abortion, you know what's going to happen? We're still going to have abortions, but it will be without the safeties and the precautions of good medical care. As soon as the government, I begged the government in 1963, do not criminalize psychedelic drugs. If you do, you'll have a black market problem. Label is on the package. If you get cocaine, hard to get it. Okay, when you get it, you got a big skull and crossbones. It says, warning, warning. This is Mississippi cocaine, pure, 100%. Or Arizona cocaine, I don't know.
Then it's not pure.
Warning, more than 2 tooths of this pure cocaine will make you a loudmouth, arrogant armpit for 2 hours. Another thing, we use science, common sense, scientific facts. Human beings are built with brains that have receptors that want, that need, that have to have psychotropic neurotransmitters. Animals do. There's a book by Ron Siegel which demonstrates it. Animals, deer, monkeys, buffaloes, beavers, they go crazy for fermented grains. They'll chase your marijuana, poor hard-working marijuana farmers in Montana, the goddamn deer are eating up all their stuff. Mammalian human nervous system needs to have the brain changed, conscious altered, just like you need food and drug and sex. Thank you for reminding me of that. The problem is, though, see that mechanical industrial aid, the cocaine, when eaten on the leaf, is a wonderful, wonderful energizer in your farms. The Spanish conquistadors learned that when they made the peasants down there work hard, and they work hard, they don't want much to eat. The Pope, when he flew to Peru, last year, he only had in his plane 2 cups of cocaine tea. And when he got to his hotel room, guess what he ordered? 1 more for a nightcap. The point I'm making here is that used correctly and used scientifically and balanced, all of these necessary chemicals that the brain needs can be made extremely ineffective. We should have a crash program that will give you a form of euphorant that makes you feel more energetic and makes you move faster, that doesn't cause an addiction. I mean, so you got a little mixture of the essence of marijuana along with that cocaine. See? So that instead of being a loudmouth, arrogant asshole, you become a little mellowed out. In other words, science, education, common sense, and above all, compassion will solve this problem. I'll say one thing, okay? I have 3 minutes, I'll take one, because the most fun we have at these meetings is when you guys get up here and argue with us and talk with us. They got microphones here and there, and we want to hear, we love rowdy crowds. Curtis can handle himself very well, as you know. And, I'd like to say one thing, in common sense. The American government, in the last 8 years, has set up a situation where we're running a deficit. It's an enormous deficit. What is it, $160 billion a year, now into trillions. And everything that the government is trying to do with drugs is to build up more tax deficits. If you legalize cocaine, $160 or $70 billion there would eliminate the deficit. The $69-70 billion for marijuana would pay back the deficit. If we go on to talk about addiction and self-indulgence, the Reagan-Bush administration has been tooting trillions of dollars and shoving stocks and savings and loans, corrupt money in their veins. They're going to leave you young people with the bill. And in 10 or 15 years, when Ronnie is long gone and I'm long gone, well, I'm going to be frozen, you know. We're going to be stuck with a multi-trillion-dollar bill for the Reagan-Bush party, and you're going to find your prisons filled with probably 1 million or so minority youth that are in for life. And, that's something we simply can't let happen. I say to you tonight what the people were saying in the Berlin Wall and Czechoslovakia and China: freedom now. Get the government off our back. Thank you.
When crack came around and exploded across the surface of America, I would have thought that
I've never seen that.
Dr. Leary would have been crushed like some cockroach, put out of existence. But you know what ought to frighten you is that Secretary Schultz of the Reagan administration now agrees with Dr. Leary. Make money, he says, make money. And you know when he gave that speech, Stanford University, reported in the Wall Street Journal. Wasn't given in an inner city public housing project. I don't know. Who was another advocate of the Leary approach towards drug decriminalization? A friend of yours, William Buckley. You should be clapping, right?
No.
Shouldn't matter his politics. He agrees with Dr. Leary on that. And this Mayor Carl Schmoke in Baltimore used to be a federal prosecutor. And a whole litany of others who are jumping aboard on that bandwagon. Problem is, when you look at where drugs have been legalized, Dr. Leary had to mention naturally Peru, Colombia, chewing coca leaves. That's not what we do here. We don't chew coca leaves. We smoke crack, inject cocaine, shove it up our nose, slam it and jam it in our veins, right? Toot, make love to the big pipe. Doesn't have the same effect. I don't know of any country in Europe lately that's legalized the use of cocaine or crack. In fact, England experimented in legalizing heroin. Had its addicts register. They went to pharmacies with a prescription. They were able to get it. It created a huge black market explosion. England had to cancel out free heroin. And they were dispensing needles to them prior to the AIDS epidemic. America, we've legalized drugs. Haven't you heard of it? Methadone? Oh, I know most of you are not slamming and jamming heroin into your veins, but we have a legal form of drug that's dispensed. Your tax dollars go for it in almost every major urban area. Methadone. Oh, that's been an amazing success story. What an outstanding track record. Everywhere there's a methadone clinic, right? They're outside. They're like buzzards and vultures, packs of them, selling that stuff out, creating a black market. It just hasn't worked. Now you all want to create America as the great experiment in the world. Legalize cocaine, crack, and heroin. And we have the problem here. That's all you care about. Hey, just legalize marijuana. Let's not deal with drugs. But you know, when you go to the detox clinics, when you go to all those people who haven't been as fortunate as you to somehow escape abuse, you know, the ones that I talked about, the 20%, and they sit there in their AA meetings or their drug anonymous meetings, and you hear the families, and some of you chuckling like total assholes. And what about some of your friends who have committed suicide, some of your friends who have now become lifetime walking, talking zombies? I mean, you want to just discard all that. Dr. Leary mentioned all those who were killed through accidents attributed to alcohol. That's a terrible thing. And if you notice, I haven't separated alcohol from drugs. Are you going to legalize crack? You see some of the people eyeballs bulging out, right? Driving along 5,000 miles an hour. Oh my God, all they jump up and sit down. And you know what's amazing? What's amazing in all this? We're talking about legalizing these drugs. And all of a sudden, my dad, he's from Dr. Leary's generation. I remember him in the 60s. He wasn't like Dr. Leary, thin and trim. My dad was Slob Slabinski. He had that big gut, a sack of groceries up front. He thought that was success. Potatoes, gravy, carbohydrates, polyunsaturated. And that's when he washed it down with a big beer, six-pack. And all of a sudden, through advertising, through changing the visual images, through totally going 180 degrees. In the 80s, my dad, 4:30 in the morning, like many of your dads and moms, they're jogging around. They're sweating. It looks like they're going to have cardiac arrest. They're holding their pulse. They're reading their various temperatures. All of a sudden, they're at salad bars and Roy Rogers fighting over croutons. My dad would never have thought of being in a salad bar. They're giving up cigarettes. They're giving up booze. They're living a holistic lifestyle. My wife writes she's interested in the pH balance of her shampoo, the proper vitamins for nail proper care, skin care. She goes to the supermarket, she's in the aisle night computerizing the prices, reading the box tops. What type of caloric intake is this? What kind of vitamin content can I get from this? Going to the gym, slamming and jamming those calisthenics and isometrics, and talk about a 180-degree turn from the 60s, your bosom buddy, Jane Blunder Woman Fonda, right? Remember her looking up? Shoot them down. Yeah, get a good sight on our boy. Now all of a sudden she's like Jack LaLanne of the 80s. Oh yeah, Miss Capitalist here, Jane Fonda, really making them bucks, and looking good, holistic living. Why should we suddenly give in if we've seen that a campaign like this can totally change living styles and habits and a whole generational's viewpoint on how to take care of themselves, and now we're going to cash in all the chips and legalize drugs? Look at how others around the world look at us. I'm always fascinated. We watch 60 Minutes and we see human rights violations in Central America, Afghanistan, South America. And I'm sure on Fridays and Saturday nights, as you're sitting around having a beer splurge, that some of you put on a sheet, somebody bangs a drum, flies a flag, and suddenly there's an instant demonstration outside against an impropriety somewhere in the world. I was marveling what must go on Sunday nights in Japan, watching their 60 Minutes as they have their rice bowl. Holy shit! 1,800 murder in New York City, 1,200 murder in Los Angeles, 800 murder in Detroit. I think they got a goddamn civil war going on there. And you need to tell me, I'm amazed. All of a sudden you legalize this, and this is going to end the Uzi, Tony, dope-sucking, psychopathic killing machines running around out there? Let me leave you off on one note. I will acknowledge, for suburban America, life will be better. You'll be able to take some bars off the window. You won't have to worry about your car radio being hoisted out. You won't be seeing drunk zombies roaming about in the parking lots of the affluent shopping malls. But you will literally create a form of terminal perpetual genocide for black, brown, and Indian peoples in the poor and impoverished areas. Because they won't have rehabilitation. There won't be the 6-week miracle cure. They're not Liz Taylor or Doc Gooden. They won't be able to get into the Smithers Institute or the Betty Ford Clinic. You know that. 3 generations of drug use and abuse in the inner city, and look what it's reaped us. Broken families, babies having babies, and you want to legalize this madness. So laugh. But look in your own backyards, and the number of young people of your generation who succumb to the problem. And then talk to me about what a great person you are, the us and we philosophy of America. And I'd have to say, you sure seem to be epitomizing the selfish I and me. I'll get high, I'll feel good, regardless of who else can't handle it.
We all understand and sympathize with the problems in the inner city, and the way to do it is not to himself and to hear what's on your mind. I want to remind you, Curtis, see that there's a terrible thing, we all know it's a terrible thing that's happened in our inner cities among the poor of all races. If that has happened in the last 8 years, and we've had an all-out war on drugs and a frenzy campaign to crack down. I want to remind you that in 1976 we elected a real kind of hippie, howdy-doody guy named Jimmy Carter president. I mean, in the Rambo, steroid, Ollie North 80s, he seemed like a winner. During the Democratic administration of Carter, marijuana was legalized or decriminalized in 14 states. Carter himself and most of the people in the White House and most of the people, many people in Congress were all set to decriminalize marijuana. I want to remind you how peaceful it was during the Carter administration. You didn't have these problems of crack in the ghetto. Human rights, remember that? Carter, granted he was not as effective as we wanted. His major thing was peace. He got over, the Israeli and the Egyptian minister. I'm making the point that we all understand and sympathize with the problems in the inner city, and the way to do it is not to keep the profit, not to once you criminalize something, you've created a class of criminals. You're not going to stop. There are 40 million Americans who use illegal drugs. There are 75 or 80 million Americans that use illegal drugs, which I pointed out are more dangerous, nicotine, alcohol, and legal pills. I mean, ask any senator. The real problem are a combination of alcohol and pills. What? I can't hear. Come on up and get the. We are going to use when George Schultz went to Stanford and he said, we gotta decriminalize drugs. George Schultz is not a Grateful Deadhead. He's irrelevant. He's a tough-minded corporate Republican. I see his doing this because there was a poll a couple years ago, and a third of the police chiefs in America want to legalize marijuana. They know what's going on. But no politician dares, at a time of war, take any position that is not full gung-ho war. So when you declare war, there's no more logic, there's no more discussion, there's no scientific studies. It says all out. I think when George Schultz called for the decriminalization of drugs, it was not some fly-by-night movement on his part. He's a really veteran, tough-minded, realistic, corporate politician. I see his history will probably see George Schultz's statement as being very much like that of Fulbright, Senator Fulbright. You don't remember, perhaps, but when the war in Vietnam was going on and nobody dared to oppose the war, more troops, a million troops there, and the casualties mounting, finally realized that you couldn't win the war, and it was a man, a Southerner, Senator Fulbright, and finally came out and said, stop it. And then within about a month or two, Walter Cronkite came out and said, let's stop the war, and then it's going to happen. I think that George Shultz movement is going to be seen in that light. It just doesn't work, Curtis. I don't have any answers. There are going to be problems in the inner city, education, and above all, compassion. Above all, powers of understanding. And let's stop throwing kids in prison and spend that money on education and rehabilitation and cure.
Question and answer format. The way it will work is that we'll go from the front microphone to the back microphone. Their responses will be limited to between 2 and 3 minutes, so that all questions may be responded to. We would like to make one more comment, and we request that if you do have a question, that it be addressed towards the issue of drugs in America, not towards an individual. We're trying to keep this as regimented as possible. Thanks for your help.
Usually we have the person direct the question to either Curtis Sliwa or to me, and then we won't take 2 minutes, we'll take about a minute and a half, and then the other person, if the question is asked to Curtis, I may want to challenge him or vice versa. But, okay, address your question to one of us.
These guys got quick.
What I meant by that was that it should be generated toward the top of the drugs in America and not subsidized. But that's fine. But your question can't be addressed to one person in the other order, but both of the other persons.
The question is, well, they say that with common sense and what have you, through education, we can use drugs and what have you. What common sense has this government shown for AIDS education? I mean, kids are still out there thinking that through tears you can get AIDS. I don't see how the government can, through their inability, show the drugs, the evils of drugs and what have you. Kids already have a preordained in their head what they think about it. So I don't understand what common sense you think this government has to show.
You asked me that question? Yeah. Well, I totally agree with that question. But there's one thing that every person under the age of 40 in the world today who has access to television knows, assuming they have more than one finger or forehead, is that partisan politics is finished. And the idea that you can elect one regime or one clique or one group of bureaucrats to control and solve our problems is totally insane. Yeah. The topic of drug rehabilitation is going to be done by the neighborhood, by the family. Get the government out of it. Get the government off our back. I agree with you totally that we can't expect the government to do this.
You actually agree that people should organize and together form. Like the 60s we don't have it was love and all that generation. In the 80s we don't have enough love in this world. There's more walls put up just by facades that people have their clothes and their dress. So it's actually legalized and we need to unite against more of a common peaceful cause and then deal with that later. We have so many problems in this world.
Yeah, there's this illusion, I think I got your point, that somehow Big Brother in Washington, by making us pee in a bottle, can solve the problems of drug taking in the workforce. It's got to come down. If you're in an airline, you got to work together and make sure that Joe's been drinking. Hey Joe, don't fly today. If hey man, I don't want you landing your plane high on the sea, looking at pretty colors. You can't have a National Guard there with your expenses. It's got to be team play. And on in a basketball team, you can't have your investment. The players police themselves. It's self-control and inter-group control. We don't need the federal government. Can't solve its own problems. And please get out of our bodies.
I got to respond to that. You make it control. Come on. Two things people don't have control about is an insatiable appetite for pleasure. whether it be alcohol and drugs on one end. And how many of you guys, you guys look at them. How many of you guys see a nice babe walk by and you want to rack her bones, right? Come on, admit it. Now, you're telling me what prevents you from doing that is your outstanding moral character? Or you maybe doing 25 years to life in the state penitentiary and then having a butt bunny in yourself for life. If I was to tell the average American that there was a 16-wheel tractor trailer out there and that I just licked the rear wheel and what a buzz I got. Watch the line, he gets down on the end and he's thinking that
My theory is try everything once. I don't know about that trailer though, Curtis.
Okay, this question is directed towards Curtis. Okay, Curtis, you said make all drugs illegal, drugs like heroin, cocaine. Okay, well, why not make caffeine illegal? It's the most addictive drug in America. More people in America drink a cup of coffee. It does heat the lining of your stomach, and it does harm the intestines. So why not make caffeine illegal?
You know, I'm amazed that you even put crack and caffeine in the same sentence.
One before the FDA.
I'll tell you what. Having an orgy one night and just guzzling Coca-Cola, all night long, and see if it does to you what one hit on a rock of Coke does. I mean, it's not the same. Should we be getting away from caffeine use? Yes. Like my dad, Slavinsky, was getting away from the carbohydrates and others. But these serious drugs, no, we're not playing around. You don't use it every day, every month, and then suddenly become addicted. These are quick, biting addictions that cause free falls, like jumping out of a plane. Boom! Instant one-way trip to Palookaville. We've seen enough of it. Rich, poor, in between.
Curtis, but if you put as much of pure concentrate caffeine in your system as you did with cocaine, you could kill yourself.
Curtis is wonderful because he's given us here the typical narcotic police rap on drugs. Boys and girls, this pleasure of crack cocaine is so great that if you took one sniff, you'd have an orgy and you'd fuck all night. And you'd never go to class again, and you'd end up robbing your mother's purse. I mean, one sniff. Ultimate pleasure, irresistible attraction. Give me a break, Sergeant. I wish you would... Cocaine, it gives you a little, for half hour, you think you're on the top of the world, the smartest guy that ever lived. Yeah, okay. And meanwhile, nobody invites you to dinner anymore. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're home alone twitching, right? Common sense. Newsweek magazine and Miami Vice have done more to create the cocaine menace in this country. Did you ever see, the real drug war is a circulation war between Time and Newsweek. You know that. I mean, they're proving this up just the way Hearst papers whipped up the Spanish-American War. You know that story. Newsweek impersonally, has done more to create the cocaine drugs. They have at least 30 covers in the last 8 years. And the covers design is that mountain, Everest mountain of cocaine. I mean, more cocaine than you've seen in any movies except for Scarface. And then it's got the razor, it's got all the equipment there, and usually you might have a good-looking young man or a young woman, and in the background, wall-to-wall $100 bills. Now, what an advertisement. Mountain of cocaine, ultimate pleasure, irresistible joy, hedonic orgies, and billions of dollars. I mean, and Miami Vice has created this evil. So we needed to have an enemy. Once that Gorbachev said, hey, no more Cold War, oh shit, what are we going to do with the military? What are we going to do with the guns? We have to have an enemy. Severe enemy deprivation. bad movies, all those Rambos, and even James Bond. Everyone's running around the enemy now is the coke dealer. And the coke dealer has big yachts. He's got these $1 million palaces surrounded by good-looking women and men. I mean, give me a break. The facts of the matter are that cocaine, is safer than speed. You know that. They're not, if you could succeed somehow stopping the Andean, Colombian enterprises, wipe cocaine off the map, you have speed being made in every garage in every rural part of the United States, and speed lasts about 20 hours. You heard about ice? I mean, ice, which you make in a garage, is 10 times worse than crack. So let's de-glamorize it. Let's do it. Come on.
That's better.
Cocaine is kind of a go. Once you're 69 years old on New Year's Day, he won too.
Yes, this question goes to Dr. Leary. Dr. Leary, as an educator, you gave us a lot of statistics and facts about how much the national economy is going to go out of debt when and if we legalize drugs. I want to know, where's your statistic? What is going to happen to the technology of all these young students that all they're going to do is get high in college? And what is going to happen when our national economy falls because there's not going to be any more education because of the use of these drugs?
Before Dr. Leary answers, we're going to have to limit the response to about 3 minutes each because so that as many people who want to ask questions can.
Do you seriously want to stand up and tell this audience that if you legalize marijuana, class anymore? Or if you legalize cocaine? I mean, you're insulting the young people of America. We can deal with Rambo, Bush, and Quail. We can deal with tiny powder. I mean, really, this is demonizing, and it's ultimately the only people that get addicted to anything, whether it's booze or heroin or crack or television, are people who don't have anything to be active in, who don't have any hope, who don't have any place to go. So let's give us all a boost so we're all moving somewhere we want to go. That's where education is going to come into play. And as I'm saying before, saying again, we're developing computer software programs that will make learning a very exciting performance active situation, not a dull education. And by the way, is anyone here teachers or students who are interested in the new software developing? Write me. You can get my address from the lecture committee, and we'll send you some material and possibly send you some programs you can use to address this problem of turning the classroom into an exciting exchange of information. Thank you.
I guess in order to use that software, you have to drop a tab of acid first. Now, let's bring it back to a little reality, because I know how you young people here in an academic setting, you can be so righteous. Incest, that exists. Fathers, brothers taking advantage of sisters, children, stepchildren. Happens a lot in this country. Almost every time you hear of this tragedy, it's related to alcohol abuse or drug abuse. How many of the rapes, the savage attacks? I'm amazed standing here that there are women in this audience cheering, knowing that some of your fellow sisters are going to suffer a horrendous fate of rape, of sexual assault and attack, and people will go before a judge and a jury of their peers and have Dr. Joyce Brothers on their side saying, well, please, he wasn't in control of his mental or physical faculties. He was in substance abuse status. Oh, and is that an excuse? Young lady, if your most valuable possession was taken from you forcibly, would you be satisfied with the answer that I had lost control of my mental and physical faculties because I had indulged in alcohol or drugs? Hell no. You tell that guy to keep his rocket in his pocket. You probably want to put the juice in his caboose and lock him up and throw away the key. So reality says, if you want to prevent these atrocities, you have to address on the cabinet.
Hey, he's a feminist.
Oh yeah, it's not sexual in nature. The last rapist I know didn't have a hard-on, right? Yeah, all right.
That was good. Oh,
Right, violence, not sexual at all. None of these guys get their rocks off. All right.
Are you saying that drugs cause rape?
Right, this is for you, Mr. Leary. This isn't a question, it's just something you made me think about. I think you're right in the sense that you said that drugs aren't the major problem in this country, but they're a big factor in one major general problem in this country, which I think that the hippies in the late 60s and you, to a very large extent, contributed a great deal to. And what that comes down to is willingness to take responsibility for one's own actions. Now, when I smoke a rock of crack, without regard to the consequences of it, that's failure to take responsibility. When I get in my car and drive home without insurance or anything, that's failure to take responsibility for myself. Now, the ideas of the late 60s, peace, love, happiness, great, do your own thing. Beautiful. The only problem is somewhere along the line that whole idea of freedom got mistaken for the idea that you're free to not worry about consequences of what you do. See? I mean, teachers saying to their students, hey man, don't read the chapter, bring your right chain to class, read that, that's cool, I don't want to come to the trip, Hey, oh, beautiful, great. Illiteracy, bring income to class. And the question's got to let it I don't know how you feel about contributing to a climate like that. The hippies in the late 60s thought the idea of freedom was great. But after a while, they weren't after freedom, they were after a free fucking ride. I don't want to bring
I think you made your point. That's a good one. Yes. Now you're repeating yourself. I think we get your point. And I agree that you're going to see this happen in Eastern Europe as well. And I totally agree with you. It's one thing to encourage people to be free. But most people don't realize, and we didn't realize it in the 60s, that freedom does involve responsibility. That now you're going to navigate your own situation. So it's much harder, it requires more discipline, it requires more work, more responsibility. If you're going to be free, it's going to drop out, then you really have to work. If you stay in lockstep, there's no problem. So I agree with you. On the other hand, I think you're very out of line by just wiping out a whole generation, saying that 76 million baby boom hippies wanted a free ride. Or to say that
Jerry,
today, educational standards. Now, let's grant the 1980s are not a peace and love, hey, have a good time. We're talking Rambo, Reagan, steroids. And the education levels are dropping. And the suicide rate's going. The 60s, in spite of I agree with you, we had to learn how to be free, but you can't wipe out a generation out of that. Look back at the 60s and the good stuff we want to keep, and we want to get better navigational control, but anyway, I said that twice.
I'm not lumping them all together. All I'm saying is that...
Let's have the next question. The next one for Curtis. Come on.
I'm sure you really know it's real. I'm sure you see the real every day. I also see a lot of what's real, and it does hurt when you do that. But drugs are not the cause. I think you have your cause and effect mixed up. The cause is our society, ability to accept their responsibility for the rest of the inner city. They have nothing. They have nothing to live for. There's nothing to go for. All they have is drugs. And drugs are just a symptom of a major problem. inspiration to go in and see pipes and water pipes and distribution companies do because they suspect illegal activity when they have no hard evidence or proof. They go in there, confiscate the stuff, and they hold it for up to 2 years, and then they say, "Oh, sorry, we need to."
Right now, the fire alarms are going off. We're going to have to exit in a safe manner. Going from the back rows first. Start going to the left and down the aisle. Please, front rows, stay left.
This is one of the angels hit the button.
Right now, all there is a petition going around to have it brought back. If we don't find him tonight, we're going to sign the petition and have it brought up to my office, and we're going to reformulate it in the spring, possibly at Gamage. It's the best I can do right now.
Hey, Mark, he can stay at your house tonight, right?
If we have the interest, so if you're really interested in seeing it, take the initiative and start it.
Tim Larry's found a couple of girls and he's like,
And as the sun gently sets on this, we bid adieu to the glorious people of ASU.